Hey guys, Yamakiller here, back again with another What Decks to Play This Week video. I want to start off with a couple things before we get into the formats and the decks that I would be playing. First, there are certain formats I don't know all that much about, and I will be stating that before I talk about the format. And two, if you like my videos, like my channel, whatever, make sure to follow me on Twitch and Twitter in the description below. You'll see my tweets when I go live, other things I feel about Magic, and my personal life. And two, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Now, let us get into it. First of all, let's get into Standard. I don't know all that much about it, but in my group chats of Magic the Gathering, I have two people that qualified for the Pro Tour, and they were talking a little bit about the Standard format, and this is what they told me, along with the consensus decks that came out from the Pro Tour metagame. And that is 1, Gruel Adventures at the top, 2, Mono Green Food at the top as well, sitting in number 2. Now, what do you know? These are the decks I said were good last week, and they are still good this week coming into the format. Now, there's other decks like Esper Doom, Blue-Black Rogues, some other decks, Teamer Adventures, Teamer Ramp style decks, but Gruel Adventures and Mono Green clearly had the top spots. Now, I don't play that much Standard, and if I were to play Standard, I would play a deck that has potential cheese elements. So personally, I would pick Gruel Adventures, because Embercleave is always a good cheese element that I would love to play. That's all I have to say about Standard. Not much more to say. The data from the Pro Tour really speaks for itself. Let us move on to Pioneer. Another format I haven't been playing all that much, but a format that I have played a couple PTQs in. I have talked to some of my group members in my MTG group chat, and this is one of the decks we talked about for players who are not playing that much of the format that can get some edge in the sense that you can play this deck pretty cleanly and pretty straightforwardly, and there's not much to have about format knowledge to be able to play, and that's Mono Green Planeswalkers. You have 15 sideboard cards, but you never sideboard any cards. So it makes it so if you don't know how to sideboard, you don't need a sideboard guide. You never have to sideboard. You have Vivian Arcbow Ranger, gets to get cards out of your sideboard. Crown the Great Creator gets to get cards out of your sideboard. Makes it a lot easier to play when you know you don't have to sideboard and don't have to think about it. It's pretty straightforward. Ramp to your Planeswalkers, go get the powerful cards out of your sideboard, play cards like Elder Gargaroth and Nissa, kill your opponent. Very straightforward. There are some other decks that you can play in the format, like Oops All Spells, that have been garnering some good results. You can play some aggro decks like Mono Red to combat Oops All Spells, along with Lotus combo. You can play Azorius Spirits, Jeskai Luca. There's lots of decks you can play. No one's really trying to break the format. It's more of a casual format at the moment, only really challenges on the weekends and the occasional PTQ to play. And not much more to be said, but I would pick Mono Green Planeswalkers if I were to play a deck for this format, although there are lots of other viable options if you are willing to put in more time. Let us move on to Modern, a format that I have been playing a lot of both recently and over the last couple months. What is my deck of choice? Mono Red aggro in some variation. Now, there's one player who won both Modern challenges this last weekend with Mono Red prowess. Saturday and Sunday, same deck list. They're running some different cards you don't usually see, some Surgical Extraction on the sideboard. I'm guessing that is in retaliation to Oops All Spells or some graveyard-based decks coming up in the metagame. Now, I have some ideas on how I would like to play the deck. Others have their own ideas, and I think there's a lot of different ways you can build this deck. You can choose between how many one-drop creatures you want. Do you want to play Blood Moon in the main deck? Do you want to play Bone Crusher in the main deck? How do you want to build your sideboard? What do you want to respect? I have some thoughts, and I'm going to be tuning some things to play the Super PTQ today, but Mono Red aggro being my personal choice, although there are some other decks that I think are very good. One of them, which is Heliod Company. I think this deck kind of crushes Mono Red and Death Shadow, and if you're expecting those decks, I would highly suggest picking up Heliod Company. Now, there are some other decks that I think are very good if you are versed in Control, 4-color Urlo, possibly Tier 0 at the moment, putting up insane results. Basically, everyone who plays it does well with it. You can play some other decks like Amulet Titan / Green-White Titan. You can play some Bant Stoneblade decks that are good against the Euro decks. You can play Mono-White Taxes. You can play Niv-to-Light. You can play Oops All Spells or Rakdos Death Shadow. There's loads and loads of different decks that you can play in Modern. Not necessarily a clear best deck, though the decks that I would say if you want to be winning, play 4-color Control, Mono Red Prowess, maybe some Titan deck. Those are my go-tos right now. You can also, sidestep the meta if you don't expect your opponents to be playing that many interactive cards for your deck. You can play something like Belcher or Oops All Spells. Now let us move on into Legacy. Now, Legacy, I qualified for the Legacy Champs event. I won where I top 8'd 3 Legacy challenges or 2 Legacy challenges and a Legacy showcase in a row. 2 of them was with this Mono Blue Karn Echoes deck. Now, I don't think this deck is very good, but I do think it's fairly easy to play and straightforward. You play Chalice of the Void on turn 1. You get to play Karn or Narset or Urza early on. You can even play some Hull Breachers in this deck if you'd like. I personally can't afford Hull Breachers right now, but it is something to test, and you have the combo of LED plus Echo of the Aeons. Now, I don't think this deck is particularly good because you have a bad Delver matchup, and Delver is the most played deck in Legacy, but if you can dodge Delver, I think this deck has a lot of potential. Now, the deck that I think everyone probably should be playing is Temur Delver in some sort, whether you're playing Young Pyromancers or Tarmogoyfs and Hooting Mandrills, however you want to play the deck. But you have Oko Thief of Crowns, Force of Negation, Force of Will, Daze, Delver of Secrets, Bolts. Now, it's just a very, and a bunch of cantrips and Dreadhorde Arcanist. Just a very lean, mean, killing machine. Basically, you get to very cleanly deal with most threats in the form of counterspells or bolts, and you get a refuel with cards like Dreadhorde Arcanist, and you have a very hard-to-beat late game with Oko Thief of Crowns. Basically, you get to play all the best aspects of Legacy in one deck, and I don't really see much else to be playing besides this deck. Let us move on to Vintage. We've got our classic. We got shops in some variation. You can play Ravager shops. You can play Golos stacks. These decks are fairly straightforward. We'll get into some big mana and some prison effect. Kill them with whatever hodgepodge team of artifacts that you can come up with. Hopefully you dodge some Shattering Sprees, some Buy Forces, and some Force of Vigors. And second, you've got your graveyard decks in Dredge. You have these Bazaar of Baghdad, Basking Root Wall, Hollow One decks that try to play a really long game with like 8 force effects and blue forces and Mindbreak traps. And you can even play Hollow Vine where you try to get some Vengevines out quickly. Now, those are the different types of Bazaar decks that I think are very viable. And I think Bazaar is also another slightly easier deck to play depending on if you want to go on the Dredge route for the easiest. There are some harder versions with just the Hollow One and Basking Root Wall beat down. Now you can go combo route with Doomsday, which I think is also fairly easy. Doomsday got a lot easier with Thassa's Oracle. Basically, Ancestral Recall, Black Lotus, Thassa's Oracle. Doesn't matter what the other 2 cards are. You get to win the game most of the time. So you can go that route. You can also go the more mid-rangey route with some Sultai mid-range. That's great against Bazaar. Somewhat weak to combo. You can also go Grixis Underworld Breach, another combo deck. There's loads of different things you can do in Vintage. Basically, whatever you think you want to play and whatever style of deck you want to play, you can kind of play it to a success in Vintage. There's not that many players playing. Not everyone's trying to play the best deck. Basically, people just pick whatever deck they either think won last week because they're trying to get a quick buck in the small Vintage challenges, or whatever decks they just kind of like to play. So Vintage is pretty wide open and lots of different variations and decks that you can play. Now, let us move on to Pauper. As per usual, I'm going to say the same thing. Tron is tier 0. Playing anything else is a mistake. But if you're multi-queuing, can't play Tron, play something like Elves, play something like Burn, play something like Affinity. All different decks that are reasonable. And yeah, that's kind of my spiel for the day. If you guys liked the video, make sure to like the video. Subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitch and Twitter in the description below. I know I didn't go as in-depth on everything as I probably should have, but I try to keep these videos somewhat short and go with a quick overview of each format and what deck list and what decks I like to play and what decks I think are good. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next week on what decks to play for the week. Bye-bye.